Hey friends, this is episode 137 of the Faith, Fitness, Joy podcast, and it is episode 2 of the Moving in Faith series, Be Prepared for the Road Ahead. Last week I talked about the sort of taking the leap part of this journey and recognizing when you're being called to take a leap of faith or enter a season in which you will need to walk by the Spirit and trust God a lot. If you find yourself entering such a season as this right now in your life, then today's episode is perfect for you because I am led to share one aspect that you will really want to know that will just help you prepare for kind of this road and this path ahead as you embark on this season of faith or spiritual growth, whatever it may be. So join me in today's episode of the Faith, Fitness, Joy podcast. This is Faith, Fitness, Joy, and my name is Rochelle Renee. Are you struggling to lose weight, love yourself, and reconnect to who you truly are? Do you wish for more energy and happiness? And do you seek a deeper connection to God, or maybe to grow spiritually? As a single mom working in a demanding full-time job, I felt exactly like this. I struggled with anxiety, depression, and I was in adrenal burnout. I felt like a shell of myself. I was working over 60 hours a week. I was stressed out and spread too thin. I was overweight and I struggled with body dysmorphia. I knew I had to do something really fast so that I could be a better version of me for my kids. Fortunately, I found the way back to myself. I regained my health, I lost weight, I transformed my mindset, and I found healing. Now, my mission is to help other high-performing moms accomplish the same. Faith, Fitness, Joy is all about achieving health of the mind, body, and soul. If you're ready to lose weight or get fit, improve your nutrition, and step into the happiest, healthiest, highest version of yourself, then Faith, Fitness, Joy is the podcast for you. All right. Welcome, beautiful souls, to another fabulous episode of the Faith, Fitness, Joy podcast. I am your host and coach, Rochelle Renee, and today is the second episode of the Moving in Faith series, and today we're talking about being prepared for the road ahead. So before we dive in, as always, I want to thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you so much for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. I just crossed that milestone the other day. I am so very excited about that. Thank you so much for all of you who have subscribed and for your continued support to all of those who have been subscribed from day one and continue to listen to this podcast over the past year or so. If you're not already, please make sure that you do like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And as always, you can make a contribution of your choice if you like. I do have a link that I include in the episode description. If you want to support the podcast, it really helps me out just to continue to deliver content for all of you and continue to do this podcast as well as my blog. And also, just want to remind you, I do have a goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers. So if you want to help me achieve that, I would love it. I would greatly appreciate your help with that. So share with friends, family who you think would also benefit from or really enjoy the podcast. All right. All that being said, welcome to today's episode of the Faith, Fitness, Joy podcast. So 2 weeks ago, I kicked off this Moving in Faith series is what I'm calling it. So I started it with sort of a preface episode to kind of lay the groundwork, a little bit of background that's relevant to this series and kind of where it's headed. So that was the very first kind of episode I did in the Moving in Faith series. Sorry, there's like butterflies jumping around outside, so I keep looking out my window. And then last week was the first official episode of the mini series, and that was called Taking the Leap. So here we are today. And as I thought about what to talk about this week and kind of where to take this next, I was led to focus more on what one must be aware of when they start on this path. So again, this could be taking a leap of faith, like some of the examples I've provided in the last couple episodes where maybe you are chasing a dream, pursuing a goal, and you feel like you're being called to take a leap of faith that really stretches you and pushes you out of your comfort zone in order to achieve that. It could also be a situation in your life where, you're facing something challenging. You might have to be You might be contemplating ending a relationship that means a lot to you or that is really difficult for you to consider walking away of or something like that. And it could be a number of things in between, right? So there are different things that might set us off on this. It could also be a season of spiritual growth or a season in which you are being, led through the things that are happening in your life to increase your faith, to grow in your spirit as you're moving through this particular season in your life. And a lot of times these things aren't obvious on the surface, right? So that's kind of the different things that are like in the context of this mini series. But like I said, I started with Taking a Leap as the first official episode last week, and I wasn't necessarily going to take it in this direction yet, but like I said, I was led to talk about today's topic, which is called being prepared for the road ahead. So one thing I have learned looking back on my many walks of faith, and not by sight, is that of these seasons, all of these seasons, they serve a couple of different purposes, a few different purposes. The first one is they serve to grow and evolve your soul. The second is that they serve to bring you closer to or in alignment with the life that you're destined for or maybe dream of. And 3, they serve to refine you, move you through that process of inner transformation, spiritual transformation, refinement. And 4, they lead you back to the truth of who you are, which is a spirit, which is this spiritual, energetic being within this physical vessel. A lot of us, I know myself included for most of my life, I never knew otherwise, we identify with our physical body. We might identify with our name, our personality, our mindset, or our ego, or other aspects of self that are not really who we are. So now I mention all this because what today's episode is more focused on is the second item of these 4. So to bring you closer to or in alignment with the life that you're destined for, or perhaps the life you dream of. Because when you choose this path, it is going to involve stripping away some or all of the things that you currently may think are really important, but they're not. And it's things that have to be stripped away in order for you to be able to step into your destiny, if you will, or receive that big dream that you have or that big goal that you have for yourself. And this stripping away can include relationships, home, jobs, other material items, money, even who you think you are. So like your ego could be something that gets stripped away. So these last 2 weeks, I've shared the various leaps of faith or seasons of spiritual growth that I've moved through over the past decade of my life. So this all started back in 2014 for me. I know that was the kickoff. That year was sort of when this 10-year cycle started for me, and I've just completed it, and it's hard to explain beyond just this knowing that I've moved out of that cycle. So the 2 most recent journeys or leaps of faith or spiritual growth seasons that I've moved through were when I moved from my lifelong home to a whole other state where I'm at now. And then when I took a leap of faith in October of 2023 to leave my previous job to go all in on my business. Those are the ones that really stand out to me in regard to today's focus, because that process of becoming more aligned with the version of me that has the things that I dream for myself, or that is like becoming more aligned with my purpose and why, God has led me to understand I am here in this world, what I'm here to do. Those really stand out to me as the best examples of kind of what I'm focusing on for today. Now, I don't know if there's really any way, a really good way to fully prepare someone for what this path entails if you've never been through it, or maybe you've been through something like it, but you may not have necessarily had to go to some of the depths, or maybe you just weren't as conscious of it, for example, is another way that might have played out for you. But it is my intention today to help prepare you as much as I can for this part of the path, because it really is challenging. And I don't want to say that like to deter someone from, pursuing this path, the spiritual path or whatever. But, there's a reason they call it the road less traveled. And that's because there's a lot about it that's very difficult, but it's also well worth it. I can tell you it's well worth it. And it really is a beautiful journey when you, in the long run, when you kind of look back on it. But there have been definitely times where I've questioned myself, questioned God, my intuition, all of those things as I've moved through this. So let's get into it. Now, as I reflected on this and, like I said, I got this intuitive hit to focus today's part of the series on this topic of being prepared for the road ahead. It's also very deep. And so I did my best to try to not to get too deep or too complicated, but to give you enough to give you a sense of, what you're going to encounter and what this path is going to look like at points as you move through it. The key takeaway for today is really very simple. It's be prepared to lose a lot and be prepared for it to be painful. I wish there was a prettier way to sum it up, but there's not really. Now, this might sound alarming, but that's not my intention. It's just that it's necessary. It's a necessary part of it. And it's because as you grow in the spirit, you have to die to your flesh. It's like this separation process, I guess, is a good way to kind of think about it, right? So we are mainly conditioned to kind of be of the physical world, right? Like we identify with things like our name, and we have a personality and who we're friends with and our community and our likes and dislikes and all these different things. But those are really just elements and aspects of your physical body, but it's not, it's not necessarily your spirit, and it's not the spiritual part of you. And the more you allow the spiritual part of yourself, your spirit, your soul, to take up more space, the less important some of those things become. And some of those things you may not even resonate with or identify with by the end of this journey. It's just part of it. There's this saying that when you want to have a new life, or you want to embark on, changing your life in some way, or maybe changing yourself, the saying is that you can start a new life, but it's going to cost you your old one. And truer words were probably never spoken. What we may not realize is that it might cost every aspect of that old life, down to the penny, quite literally. And I speak from experience on that. This was the case for me with these last 2 seasons that I mentioned a moment ago. I was stripped of everything of my old life over the space of these past 2 years or so. Now, some of it was surrendered, right? Like, so it wasn't like all of it was like, this like stripping away or ripping away from me. There was things that I surrendered and that were obvious that I had to let go of or give up or whatever as part of doing this, right? Like, so for example, I mentioned one of these 2 seasons was moving from my lifelong home to where I am now in a totally different state. So that meant I had to sell my home of 12 years that I really loved in order to be able to move. I also had to sell or get rid of roughly, probably a little bit more than half the things that were in our home. And so, that was a whole process in and of itself, on an emotional level, physically, all of that, right? The career that I spent 20 years building, I could not, stay in that job and move out of the state. It required me to be a resident of the state where I lived before in order to be able to stay in that job. So I had to let that go in order to proceed with moving into a different state. So that was another thing that I had to surrender and let go of, like, consciously at that point in that season. But then there were also the things that were like stripped away from me. This was people and relationships. So, just basically at this point, all of the significant relationships in my life, they've pretty much been stripped away. It's not that they ended in a bad way or anything like that, but I think it's just a byproduct of, having moved to a whole other state, people being busy and all these kinds of things. The other thing that was stripped away is essentially all of my ego and my identity. So an ego death. That is a very intense process. If you have not yet experienced it, but that was another aspect of this whole thing for me. And so I've actually been going through that in and out of it for probably the whole 2-year window of time that I've been moving through these 2 seasons. And then the other thing that was stripped away was literally every penny that I had ever earned over the course of those 20 years of building that career. And I realized that hearing this, it sounds like horrible. And there was so much more than that was stripped away from me than I even listed. And there's too much to list, really. And again, I know it sounds horrible, but, and like, who would want to do that? Like, hearing this. However, being on the other side of it now and having come through all of that, I can see why it was necessary. And I can see that the reason it's painful is because of my resistance to letting some of these things go. And my perception that these things being taken away was like a bad thing or something, right? But that wasn't the case. It was really all in my mind and my perception. And a lot of it had to do with, again, this shift from being, the physical, worldly part of myself being bigger than the spiritual part of myself. So while I was moving in these times, I was growing spiritually and my inner world was changing completely. And when you understand that your outer reality, your outer world, everything in it, your relationships, your home, your income, your job, all of it is a reflection of the inner world, then it makes sense that as your inner world changes, as you start to change what's happening inside, as you start to become aware of things like your dominant thought paradigm, your mindset, your triggers, your trauma, your conditioning, as you start to look at all that stuff and you start to get to the source of it and the root of it, your internal world is going to start to change. And it's going to start to get more and more and more aligned with your spiritual self, because all of that stuff is conditioning, and it's all things that you start to learn was never even really yours. It was things that were given to you or put on you or forced on you. And it's not even necessarily like, it sounds bad. It sounds worse than it is. It's just part of being human, and growing up in this world. And I've come to understand that this is part of what we're here for. We're part of our life's purpose is to awaken to this and to remember this, or at least to have the opportunity to do that, because not everybody may choose that path and may not choose to awaken to these things. So when you become more and more aligned with your spiritual self and who you truly are, and less aligned with the physical self and thus the things of the world, whatever is no longer aligned with you, that new version of you that is more tuned into your spiritual self, it's going to fall away. It has to fall away, because you can't have sort of two opposing forces or two opposing things take up the same space. If you think about it like your house, right? You're redecorating or renovating your house, let's say. Well, you can't put new flooring in if you don't get all of your old furniture out of that room. You can't get new furniture if you keep your old furniture where it is. You have to clear all of that old stuff out in order for you to bring the new things into your home as part of your redecoration or renovation or whatever it may be. And so this part of the journey is very challenging in that sense, because that's what's happening. It's like you're clearing out but it's happening with regard to yourself, your inner world. And it's all the process of the death of your ego. It's really like this long ego death process. And I'm sure that the time frame of it is different for everybody. Having gone through this for about 3 times now, at least, I can tell you that it's well worth it, and you will be okay. You will be okay, and you will be restored, and you will be caught. I've learned that the biggest reason this whole thing, this whole ego death and this part of the path of being in a season of spiritual growth, or moving through some sort of a leap of faith or walk by the Spirit, the reason it's so challenging and painful and scary is because we are resisting it. Because it's like let's say taking the leap, right? The clear cut, like, I took a leap of faith to leave my job and pursue my business, right? Well, I still got to this valley as I've been moving, in the months past that, right? So even though I took that leap and I was really excited and I was consciously like, this is going to be great, I'm going to go after it, and I'm going to pursue being a business owner and self-employed, and it's going to be awesome, right? But while I'm moving toward that, at the same time, there's a lot of stuff I didn't want to let go of. There's a lot of stuff that I was afraid to let go of, and I hadn't totally anticipated when I embarked on this journey. I mean, it wasn't like I thought it was going to be a cakewalk or something, but there's just stuff I didn't anticipate. I had a game plan. It was like, this is what I'm going to, how I'm going to make this work. And I had kind of these milestones and targets, and I had set up I had engaged with a group that was providing some things to help, but you know how it is when you have a plan and you have the way you think things are going to go, it never goes that way. And so I had to be stripped away of certain things because they weren't aligned with where I was going. And it wasn't aligned with what I was praying for, what I was wanting, my vision for things. And God could see that clearly, but I couldn't, right? And so he's trying to strip these things away because he knows, you have to this has to be removed in order for you to get over here. In order for X, Y, and Z to work for you, I have to take these things away. But I couldn't see that. So I'm just sitting there clinging to it. And that's just making it take longer. It's making it scarier. It's making it more painful. And this is why I think we end up at this point of surrender. And the irony is, if we just surrender from the beginning, we wouldn't have to have that whole messy, scary process in the middle. But that's what it takes us to get us to the point of surrender, unfortunately. So it's all a necessary part of it. It's kind of painful, like I said, but it's just something you have to go through in order to really, fully surrender. Because when you fully surrender, you get to this level of detachment that is very hard to explain, where it's like you're helpless. You have no way, no answers. You don't know how it's going to work out. Everything you've tried has failed. Everything you've done is not panning out. So all you can really do at that point is just sit back and be like, okay, God, take the wheel. You're in charge, because I'm at a loss. I really don't know what else I can do at this point. And that is when God can truly start to move in your life. But you have to get to that point. It's always our choice when we want to get to that point. I just don't know that most of us can get there without getting to some kind of rock bottom, like I mentioned. Because we have this process of, separating ourselves from what we think is so important of the physical, and just letting that go and trusting that it's all going to be okay. You're going to be provided for. You're going to have what you need. You're going to be taken to where you need to get to, move to the next step in your path. So, like I said, there's really no good way to prepare you for this phase. Not truly, not completely. I mean, I think, you could comprehend and appreciate what I'm sharing. But until you really start to move through it, it's hard to fully understand it. I can only tell you, though, that I have learned that even when it feels like you're falling down toward the earth and you just see the ground getting closer and closer and you're about to smack right into the ground, God is still with you that whole time, and he will not let you hit the ground. He will never let you hit the ground. It's just that on that part of the path, you have to journey it in the dark. You have to find your way yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't learn how to move by faith and not by sight, and you wouldn't be ready to receive what you truly desire. It's just a necessary part of the path. You're never alone, even though it feels like it. At times, there's times where God will be quiet, and you're like, oh my goodness, did I make a mistake? And have I gotten so lost in my path? Have I gone down the wrong road that like I'm just not even getting any guidance anymore or whatever? And it's not the case. It's just that part of it is for you to learn to tune into your spirit, which is your intuition and that inner knowing and that gut feeling and that inner compass we all have. But most of us are very like out of practice with using it because we're just not conditioned to, and it's not something we necessarily need to navigate the 3D world or the physical world, but it is something you need to navigate when you are in this spiritual growth process. So that's really why this part of the path is necessary, and there's not really any getting around it. What I can tell you is that I think how long you spend in this part of it is up to you. It's up to when it's based on when you're ready to like surrender. And when you're ready to allow yourself to truly be led and feel your way through things on a spiritual level. And it's also a process of healing. You have to heal the parts of you that don't believe you can have it, or the fear that the parts of you that are afraid of actually receiving the thing that you want or getting to your destination. I mean, it sounds silly. Like if you have some big dream and you start to get closer to it, and then like it's hard to conceive of like you being scared of it and somehow sabotaging it, but we do. That's what happens. And so these are all things that come up, and you have to move through them and purge all this stuff in order to get to the other side. So, that's really what I have for you today. That's what I wanted to talk about, just because, like I said, it dropped onto my heart or last week as I was thinking about, what should I talk about for this week's episode on this Moving in Faith series. And that's what I was led to talk about. And again, I think it's because as once you get past the early stages of the process of a leap of faith or a spiritual growth season, which I mentioned in that preface episode, what those phases are. There's about 7 of them. Once you're past those early phases, you're going to hit that dark valley. And that's why I just wanted to prepare you for that and give you an idea that it is part of it. And while none of this probably sounds particularly appealing, and it might be, taken as like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, it's kind of a deterrent. I don't mean for it to be, and I hope that you wouldn't let it become a deterrent, because again, you're going to be caught, and you're going to be supported and held the whole time, even though it may not feel like it at the moment. If you can navigate that and try to keep that in mind, you will thank yourself profusely when you come out on the other side of it. And you will come out on the other side of it. God will not let you fall, and he'll never lead you into waters that you're not capable of swimming through. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. So that concludes today's episode of the Faith, Fitness, Joy podcast. As always, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, what resonates, what was helpful, if you've had a similar experience, or anything you would add that you think would be helpful for people who are maybe like in that space or getting close to it. So please share that in the comments. And if you find this helpful and you want to continue the pursuit of faith, fitness, and joy with me, please like and subscribe. And you can also find Faith, Fitness, Joy on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Also, there is a blog on my website at faithfitnessjoy.com. So thank you so much for listening today. Thank you again so much for 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. And I will see you all in the comments on the socials and in the next episode. Have an awesome rest of your